So watching people freak out that Wolverine was in an ad in a DC comic has been interesting. It's interesting to see the amount of people who don't know the history behind the two characters or the two companies, and the fact that they don't actually hate each other. Like, they're competitors in a small space, but they're also iconic on a level that does not make it necessary for them to really compete. Stanley used to refer to DC as the distinguished competition because he was very loyal to Marvel, but he did write DC comics. Um, he wrote a whole series of comics dedicated to the idea of what if Stan Lee invented DC superheroes. And they were great. Some better, some worse. But there's also been multiple crossovers from Spider-Man and Superman to Batman and Spider-Man. They've had a lot of crossovers. They've had a lot of, things. There are two full omnibuses. If you ever get the chance to check them out and pick them up, you should. DC versus Marvel and the Amalgam Age, which is one of my favorite moments in comic history. It was helmed by Pete David, who's one of my favorite comic book writers of all time. He wrote my favorite Supergirl series of all time, um, Linda Danvers' Supergirl. And it was the idea of let's take Marvel's flagships at the time, let's take DC's flagships at the time, and cross them over. So you end up with characters like Super Soldier, who is Superman, Captain America, or Darkclaw, who is uh, Wolverine and Batman, or Wonder Woman, which was Wonder Woman and Storm for the Amalgam Trinity, and a lot of other stories like that, some better, some worse. So these companies have never hated each other. They've actively worked together to bolster each other. Again, they play up the competition because it's fun. Like we as fans get into the competition because it's fun. It's something we're passionate about. Who's better, Superman, Spider-Man? Who's more powerful, the Hulk or you know that's the point. We're supposed to drum up the hype with it, and I think that you fall into one or two categories with comic books. Is there's three types of fans when it comes to the big two. There are DC loyalists, Marvel loyalists. They don't necessarily hate each other, or at least in the general sense, most of them don't. They just one prefers Marvel, one prefers DC. It's just personal preference on characters. Then you have me, who's just kind of everywhere, and just prefers writers and characters more than specific brands of characters. But I definitely lean more towards DC, coming from a childhood of growing up with mostly DC cartoons and characters. Now, most of this fucking anger and like real arguments and hatred is coming from fans who have not been in the space for very long or are not in the space at all. They have blown in thanks to the movies, and now they want to argue about which is better and what sucks about the other when this was all a lighthearted game, folks. This was supposed to be a fun thing to do. Who would win, the Hulk or Superman? That is a fucking great discussion. The Hulk is constantly getting angrier and stronger the angrier he gets, and Superman is just fucking Superman. And you've got people like Stanley who comes out and goes, whoever the writer wants to win wins. At the end of the day, they're both heroes, though. Genius. And that's the point, is we're doing it to have fun. It's fun for the what if. Who would win? Who would win this fight? Which one's better? It's the fun of the fandom. But make no notions that there is any animosity between both these companies and the people who produce them, or even mostly for the people who read them. Okay, it's weird to see the disconnect that it's been pushed by people who aren't in the medium and aren't a part of the community, that there is real hatred and animosity between the two companies. And it's like, but no, there's never been. Okay, maybe there's been people who've worked in the companies that have some anger with each other. Jack Kirby, Stan Lee. Jack Kirby went to DC, created some of the most iconic characters in the history of comic books, and had a lot of animosity with Stan. Makes sense. It happens, but those are people. Companies don't hate each other. I don't think most of the fans hate each other, to tell you the truth. It's most of the people I know who prefer one or the other. It's more of just a fun aspect of fandom. Uh, and let's get real, folks. The crossover's been coming. We're gonna get another comic crossover soon, and it's happening because it's more and more likely we're gonna get a movie crossover soon. The idea has been floating around, and it is a bona fide moneymaker, whether you like one or the other. Uh, so realistically, I feel like in the next couple years we're probably gonna get a comic crossover. The fact that we're seeing ads for each other, they're advertising in each other. Uh, Even though this is the first one in a while, but the fact that it's happening just shows that the medium is moving forward, and they're gonna collab soon.